Okay, let's dive right in. Something pretty unexpected just happened. Wendy Williams, famous for hot topics,
Yeah.
decades of industry commentary. Well, she recently testified in a federal courtroom.
Yeah, it's a big deal. This wasn't just like another celebrity popping up. She was under oath.
Exactly, bringing all those alleged observations and experiences, years of them, into a formal legal setting.
That's right. It's a huge shift from her radio and TV shows. For years, she was the one reporting, sometimes getting pushback, sometimes dismissed as just, gossip. But now, based on the source material you've got there, her detailed memories, alleged emails she brought, notes, timelines, it's all being presented as sworn testimony.
And that's what we're doing here in this deep dive. We're taking these sources you provided, specifically the excerpts reporting her actual testimony, word for word from the courtroom, and we're really going to unpack the most striking points, the patterns she described under oath. Our goal is strictly to understand, only through the lens of these specific details reported in the sources, the picture Wendy Williams painted. Claims about systemic issues, alleged threats, the behavior of figures like Diddy, Jay-Z.
Exactly. And the sources really set the scene. They describe how she came into court. Not like a celebrity making an entrance, apparently. It's
No.
more like someone calm, deliberate, presenting herself, reportedly, as someone finally telling their truth after, well, allegedly being suppressed for years.
And the sources quote her opening statement to the jury. It was pretty direct, wasn't it?
Very. I was never messy. I was never bitter. I was never lying. I was early.
Wow, I was early. Her testimony apparently went straight back to the early 2000s. Talking about Diddy, what did she claim happened when she discussed him back then?
Well, according to the sources, she flat out claimed he was protected, said everybody knew it. You couldn't talk about Puff without a phone call coming in an hour later.
An hour later? That fast?
That's what she reportedly testified, that just mentioning his name allegedly triggered this immediate, rapid pushback.
And the sources say she described specific consequences she allegedly faced.
Oh yeah, very specific reported examples. Station managers warning her off, advertisers allegedly pulling out of her show, and threats allegedly made in ways that were subtle, but as she described them, pretty unmistakable. Things like, "You're doing too much, Wendy," or even, "You're gonna get hurt, Wendy."
That detail about the girl group total really jumped out from the sources. What did her testimony actually say about that alleged incident?
It's a pretty striking story, yeah. She reportedly claimed that after she made some comment on air called "the group broke" or something,
Right.
they allegedly were waiting for her outside her building just hours later. Her statement on that, quoted in the source, was pointed. That's not coincidence, that's coordination.
So she's using these alleged specific moments to suggest a pattern. Organized retaliation.
That's exactly how the source presents her testimony, yeah.
Yeah.
Building a case for coordinated action against her.
And how did she frame her whole career then, in light of all this alleged stuff?
She reportedly called a war zone. Claimed that every single time she exposed something about Diddy, alleged details about his parties, how he treated artists, whatever, something in her professional world just collapsed. A sponsor vanished, a syndication deal got difficult, a network invite got pulled back.
But under oath, the sources say she wasn't backing down.
Not at all. The quote is powerful. "You can blackball me, you can threaten me, but you can't erase me, and now I'm under oath." And she reportedly added she hopes they're listening.
That's quite a statement to make in court, suggesting, like the source implies, she felt this testimony was finally being heard in a way her broadcasts maybe never were.
Precisely. A different level of platform, you could say.
Right. And then the sources describe her testimony pivoting. Moving on to another major figure she's discussed for years, Jay-Z. Why did she reportedly connect him to the Diddy situation?
She reportedly argued you couldn't really talk about what Diddy allegedly did without talking about the people who stood next to him, smiled with him while the abuse was happening.
And she claimed Jay-Z was one of those people.
That's what she alleged, yes. And the sources note her tone got sharper when she brought him up.
The alleged connection she focused on involved Foxy Brown, according to the testimony described.
Yes. She reportedly testified about the age difference there, Foxy being 15, Jay-Z 27. Claimed he was everywhere with her back then.
And she didn't just mention it. The sources say she actually read lyrics. Lyrics Jay-Z allegedly wrote for Foxy's album.
Yeah, she did. She reportedly read them aloud in court. "Ain't no nump like the one I got. No one can me better." And the source describes the courtroom recoiling. Her reported question to the jury was pretty stark. Why was a grown man writing those lyrics for a child?
So she's using the creative output, allegedly, to back up her broader claims.
Seems to be the intention described, yes. Linking it to the alleged dynamics she was outlining.
And she reportedly followed that up with other industry details she claimed to know.
Right. She testified about long-standing rumors, claims of Jay picking Foxy up from high school, alleged lavish gifts, shopping trips, hair appointments, all supposedly funded by him.
And her conclusion on that, quoted in the source.
This wasn't a label signing, this was grooming. Pretty strong language.
And then she reportedly brought up that alleged tape rumor.
Yes. The source says she testified about a persistent rumor involving Jay-Z, Foxy, and Jamie Foxx. And she claimed the alleged tape vanished after Foxy's home was burglarized.
Adding her own interpretation.
Her reported statement was, coincidence? I think not.
Okay, so how did she reportedly link these claims about Jay-Z back to what allegedly happened to her career?
Well, the source reports she testified that she got fired from her top-rated radio show not long after, suggesting Jay-Z's alleged relationships with underage girls needed a closer look.
And she claimed that was the reason.
She reportedly said they labeled her toxic, but that her questions were worth asking. So yeah, she's drawing a direct line, allegedly, between her asking those questions and facing professional consequences.
Did the sources mention her presenting any alleged evidence for this blacklisting claim?
Yes, she reportedly talked about presenting things like email call logs, claimed producers suddenly backed out once Jay's name came up. She alleged his team made quiet calls to blacklist her, reportedly stating, "They turned me into the villain, just for asking what any decent person should have asked."
Which leads to her claim, reported in the source, that she lost sponsors not because she was messy, but because she was, quote, right, and they couldn't let that spread. That's a significant claim about how power allegedly works.
It really is. A claim about alleged suppression mechanics.
Okay, let's shift to the part of her testimony. The sources say she claimed nobody wanted to believe, where she was allegedly called a liar.
Right. This is about the events she called freak-offs, a term that's now reportedly central to the federal indictment against Diddy.
And her quote about them early on in her testimony.
Pretty blunt, according to the source. Those weren't parties, they were operations.
Operations. Wow. She reportedly placed the timing of these whispers in the late 90s. Bad Boys peak.
Yeah, that's the time frame she mentioned. And she testified about details she allegedly heard over the years.
Like what?
Things like phones being confiscated at the door, NDAs being signed, non-disclosure agreements, demanding secrecy.
Right, NDAs.
Specific setups like candle escorts, cameras being present, people allegedly being assigned to certain rooms. Her reported description was chilling. This wasn't a house party, it was a ritual.
And the source mentioned she brought up her interview with Karen Superhead Stephens.
Yes, she did. Reportedly testified about Superhead, describing being invited by Diddy, being asked about male involvement, and detailing alleged paranoia, drugs, weird setups.
And Wendy's justification for playing that interview repeatedly back then.
She reportedly stated she felt the truth was too heavy to let it pass. So she's using her own prior public work as a form of corroboration in her testimony, it seems.
And she claimed she heard similar stories from others too, not just Superhead.
That's right. Testified about hearing from various alleged guests, men and women who came back shaken, claiming they were told exactly what to do, what to wear, who to touch, which room to go into.
And the source describes her testimony getting into alleged medical details too.
Yes, that was striking. She reportedly testified about speaking to 3 people who allegedly described seeing IV bags used for recovery afterwards, and even medical assistants on standby.
Which reportedly matches some details in the indictment now.
That's what the source suggests, yeah. Her reported conclusion on that was, this was not socializing, this was organized depravity.
The source also says she presented some kind of list.
Yeah, reportedly a list using pseudonyms only, people who allegedly gave her private accounts over the years. And she claimed these accounts matched patterns described by current witnesses in the Diddy case, like Cassie Ventura and Gene Deal.
And what about that odd baby oil detail? She reportedly brought that up.
She did. Reportedly testified she mentioned baby oil on her show years ago, kind of as a joke initially. But then claimed she learned later it wasn't funny, and that over 1,000 bottles were allegedly found, just like she'd said. Her claimed source. People told me, and I was the only one willing to say it.
And her reflection on that now.
As quoted in the source, now it's not gossip, it's evidence. Again, connecting her past commentary to current alleged findings.
Okay, let's pivot slightly. The sources describe her testimony turning to Cassie Ventura, someone she claimed she defended publicly for a long time.
Yes. She reportedly stated, "Y'all were mesmerized, but I saw a scared girl. I saw imbalance." Claims she was saying this way back in 2008, sensing something wasn't right in that relationship as she perceived it.
And she highlighted the age gap there, too, right?
It's absolutely. And pointed out Cassie was 19, Diddy nearly 40. Her reported take on that dynamic. That's not love, that's leverage.
Implying he allegedly used his status and influence over her.
That's certainly the framing described in the source, yes. Power imbalance.
And the sources say she testified about how hard she believed it was for Cassie to actually leave that alleged situation.
Yes, she reportedly alleged Diddy's influence, the jets, the security, his industry pull made it extremely difficult. Her reported statement was powerful. She didn't need a boyfriend, she needed a bodyguard.
The source even says she mentioned an old clip from her own show.
Yeah, reportedly talked about a clip from years ago where she claimed you could see Cassie look down and flinch when Diddy raised his voice during an interview they did.
And she called it out back then.
She reportedly called it trauma at the time, but testified that nobody listened back then.
And notably, the sources say prosecutors reportedly entered a timeline of Wendy's broadcasts as evidence, showing parallels to Cassie's later legal claims.
Yes, which really highlights how those early comments, maybe dismissed at the time, are potentially being viewed very differently now in a legal context. That's what the source material suggests.
Did she report specific details she was allegedly told about the relationship itself?
Yes, she reportedly testified about being told Diddy allegedly had access to Cassie's phones, would show up at hotels unannounced, even got staff to unlock doors for him.
And the alleged consequence for her saying this stuff publicly.
She claimed her show sponsors pulled the plug, directly linking speaking out about Cassie's situation to losing advertisers.
And she reportedly referenced that 2018 incident, when Cassie ended the relationship after Diddy allegedly forced his way into her home.
She did testify about that, reportedly, and added, "That's not the first time he showed up uninvited," implying, as the source describes her claim, a pattern of alleged intrusive behavior.
What really stands out in this section, reading the sources, is her reported breakdown of what she termed mogul dynamics. It sounds pretty chilling.
Yeah, she reportedly laid out a sequence: alleged grooming, then isolation, leveraging industry power, and using luxury, forcing it almost, as a means of obedience.
In a reported statement on that.
Really stark. He didn't just love Cassie, he owned her. And when she broke the chain, she became dangerous. Framing it not just as personal problems, but as a systematic alleged application of power and control.
Her conclusion on the Cassie part of her testimony, according to the source.
Equally pointed. Everything in that lawsuit, I saw the signs, I said it publicly, and now she's finally being heard, but at what cost?
Suggesting, as reported, that the price for speaking out was huge, both for Cassie and allegedly for herself.
Yeah, that seems to be the implication described.
As her testimony went on, the sources say her voice slowed down a bit, reflecting on how hard it allegedly was to speak out against powerful people.
Yes, she reportedly stated, "You don't get to talk about men like Diddy and walk away clean." Claims she knew it would be tough, but maybe didn't realize just how deep the alleged pushback would run.
She reportedly mentioned a specific message from 2004.
Yeah, from a record label exec, she claimed, telling her to stop talking about Puff or else. And then, she alleged, she was pulled from her time slot the very next week, called it punishment.
And she alleged Diddy himself made strategic calls.
Yes, she reportedly claimed he personally called label heads, promoters, networks, warning them away from her. Testified a program director told her straight up, "You went too far, you poked the wrong bear."
She reportedly summarized some of those other alleged blackballing incidents we talked about earlier.
That's right, the total group thing, which she reportedly framed as a direct message. "We can get to you." Being disinvited from bet events, denied media passes, losing ad deals.
Our point being,
Her reported claim, it was all coordinated. Diddy didn't just want to stop me, he wanted to erase me.
and the sources say she presented specific alleged proof for this coordination claim, like emails.
Yes, she reportedly testified about printed emails, allegedly from PR firms being instructed to distance themselves from her show, and claimed one specifically identified Sean Combs as the client giving that instruction.
So, offering what she claims is concrete evidence of coordinated action.
That seems to be the intent described in the source material, yes.
She reportedly told the jury, "That's what he does if you speak, you lose everything," but claims she talked through the silence.
A pretty powerful image of resistance against the alleged system she was describing.
She also reportedly touched on that controversial homosexual era of hip-hop comment she made years ago.
Yeah, claiming it was truth, but that she was burned at the stake for it, alleging it was part of efforts to protect stars by shaming anyone who questioned them.
And she reportedly mentioned her 2004 book again.
Yes, saying it had coded references back then that people called gossip, but now, she testified, government calls it evidence, drawing that line again between her past work and current legal proceedings.
She also brought up that 2009 interview she did with Mark Curry, the former Bad Boy artist.
Right, who called Diddy the shadow that ruins people. And Wendy claimed that interview mysteriously disappeared from archives afterwards.
Another alleged example of suppression, in her view.
That's how she reportedly framed it.
And she claimed she faced pushback emails, threats, even FCC complaints, formal complaints to the regulator whenever she featured industry critics, like Superhead, Gene Deal, Jaguar Wright.
Yes, her reported takeaway was, they tried to shut me down through every angle.
The sources highlight her claim about an alleged unwritten list in the industry, people you just couldn't criticize.
Yeah, and that breaking that rule meant paying a price. She alleged hot topics on her show got flagged, producers got threatened, execs warned her to back off.
And their alleged reasoning.
She reported them saying, you're gonna mess it all up for them, but then added, but now it's all messed up anyway because the truth is out.
Her conclusion on this whole section, as reported, is that she sees this trial not as the start, but the end of a cover-up. That she's been sounding the alarm for 20 years.
Yeah, basically positioning her testimony as the culmination of this long, difficult effort, as she alleges it, to speak truth to power.
And then came maybe the most unexpected part of her testimony, according to the sources, when she reportedly started naming other huge names.
Exactly. That definitely caught attention. The sources report her saying, you think this is just about Diddy, you're wrong, claiming it was about the whole ecosystem that protected him.
And she named names she said you were never supposed to hear in a courtroom.
Tyler Perry and Oprah Winfrey, that's what the sources report she alleged were part of this protective ecosystem.
She explained this by referring back to that alleged unwritten Hollywood list, people you don't cross.
Yes, framing it as a system where if you spoke out against certain powerful people, you'd essentially disappear professionally. Severe consequences.
And she reported specific alleged fallout involving Tyler Perry after she exposed parties and manipulation.
Claimed he blackballed her, yeah. Alleged sources confirmed her name was passed around labeled unstable.
And after the film Precious, which involved both Perry and Oprah.
She claimed her access just collapsed, wiped off guest lists. She testified an executive told her point blank, Oprah's people don't want you near her anymore. That's power.
And she alleged that power was used to protect people like Diddy.
That was her reported claim, yes.
Now, reading the sources, this next part is particularly heavy. She allegedly shared a story about confiding something traumatic privately to Oprah.
Yes, and then claimed her alleged abuser later appeared on Oprah's show right when Wendy herself was allegedly being blackballed.
What did she reportedly say about that moment?
Her words, quoted in the source, were incredibly stark. That wasn't just betrayal, that was retaliation. Presenting this alleged personal experience as proof of powerful figures using influence to punish her.
She reportedly claimed these figures smiled with him, stood beside Diddy while the rest of us were getting crushed for speaking out, and her alleged reason why.
Because they needed him for deals, for reach, for silence, basically positioning them as alleged enablers, part of the machine, as she called it.
And the sources say she presented alleged evidence linking Perry and Combs specifically.
Yes, reportedly an email she claimed was accidentally forwarded to her about crisis communication involving Perry's studio and a Bad Boy brand.
And the subject line.
Allegedly just. Managing optics, Wendy, Puff, Tyler. Her reported reaction. That was all it said, but that was all she needed. Using this alleged email to try and link them directly in managing perception around her and Diddy.
Her reported conclusion on this point was powerful.
These aren't just isolated stars. They're a machine that feeds on silence and destroys anyone who dares pull the curtain back. A really strong accusation of an alleged systematic structure of control.
And the sources describe her bringing actual physical evidence to the stand for this part.
Yeah, reportedly pulled out a file folder, claimed it had alleged NDA email threads, internal memos, stuff she said industry friends gave her because they were tired of seeing things covered up, truth called gossip.
And she actually read from an alleged NDA from 2007.
Yes. reportedly read language about not disclosing private gatherings, recordings, interactions with Combs or his associates, and crucially, the alleged penalty for violating it, financial penalties and, quote, public retaliation.
Public retaliation, wow.
Her comment on that, reportedly, that's how deep it went, using the document itself as alleged evidence of enforced silence.
She also reportedly read from a luxury hotel email from 2015.
Yes. Claimed it was relevant to when Cassie was with Diddy. Said the email detailed instructions for prepping a suite, specific amenities, discretion measures, assistant setups before guests arrived.
Her point being?
Her reported question to the jury. You think this was just celebrity partying? This was a system. Planned, funded, scheduled, cleaned up. That was her alleged claim.
And she claimed to have evidence of payments made to manage the narrative.
Yes. Reportedly alleged payments to publicists, managers, even bloggers. With email instructions, she claimed, to avoid rumors and push philanthropy stories instead. More alleged evidence of the machine.
A photo was presented too, the source says.
Yeah, reportedly a photo of Diddy, Tyler Perry, and a crisis consultant at a gala in 2019. Wendy's reported commentary on it. Smiling while women were getting paid to shut up and others were getting destroyed for not signing.
She also reportedly testified about being offered an NDA herself.
Alleged she was offered a big syndicated TV deal, but only if she agreed to drop certain topics from her show.
And she said no.
Testified she refused and paid the price for it.
Her final words on this section, as reported, really hit hard about the silence they allegedly bought.
Yeah, costing others freedom, peace, truth. And now, she claimed, it's all unraveling one NDA at a time, framing these alleged agreements as tools of suppression now being exposed.
As her testimony wrapped up, the sources say she stayed composed, reflecting on these 2 decades of warnings.
Yes. Reportedly stated, you see Diddy on trial, but I see something much bigger. This isn't just about what he did, it's about who let him do it.
And the sources mention her gesturing toward the defense table.
Yes, reportedly saying, you see one man, but behind him is a legacy of silence, calling it a tower, built on alleged fear, NDAs, power plays, party invites, billion-dollar deals.
And she addressed the jury directly about this tower.
Reportedly stated that every time someone tried to speak out, that tower crushed them.
Highlighting others she claims sat by quietly. Jay-Z, Perry, Oprah, labels, handlers.
Yes, alleging some watched abuse, shook hands, took checks, made sure anyone asking questions got pushed out.
Her absolute final words under oath, reported in the source, kind of summed it all up, didn't they?
Very much so. Called bitter, called crazy, but I was right. And I would rather be right in hell than be silent in heaven.
A really defiant closing statement, framing her public persona as the price for speaking the truth, as she saw it.
Definitely.
And then, looking towards Diddy, she reportedly said he thought she was gone, thought his power was enough, but truth caught up, adding, I hope it's loud.
Yeah, a very direct statement towards him in that courtroom setting, as described. The source also notes that as she stepped down, she looked at the gallery.
And said what?
Reportedly stated this trial isn't the end, but the beginning of people finally naming names, of the walls cracking, and maybe that whole tower eventually falling down.
Wow. A pretty striking image to end her reported testimony on, connecting her alleged personal story to this much bigger alleged systemic problem.
Absolutely. It leaves you thinking.
So just to recap the core of what Wendy Williams reportedly testified to, based purely on the source material you shared, it was this firsthand account, under oath, alleging decades of abuse, suppression, and this broad network of powerful figures who allegedly enabled harmful behavior through silence and coordinated retaliation.
And it's really crucial, like you said, to stress that this deep dive is based only on those specific details, the alleged evidence described, the quotes, the claims reportedly made by Wendy Williams in court, as provided in that source material. We haven't brought in anything else.
Exactly. So for you listening, how does hearing these specific points, the alleged evidence she reportedly presented, the specific names she reportedly named under oath, all detailed in the source material, how does that shape your understanding of the events and dynamics described?
It definitely adds a lot of layers to consider, especially that focus on the alleged systemic nature of it all.
Wendy Williams described, as reported in these sources, a tower allegedly built on silence and fear, one that crushed those who spoke out. If you accept that premise, if such a structure exists, what happens to its stability when its foundations get questioned like this, publicly, under oath, in a federal courtroom?
That's the big question, isn't it? Definitely something that lingers after reviewing the reported details of her testimony.